And for more on the Chinese beer industry, I spoke to Stephen Beaumont. He is a co-author of the World Atlas of Beer. And I asked him to compare the craft market in China to conventional breweries.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about China specifically, the difference is vast. The craft beer industry is much less than 1% of the total volume of the Chinese market. So it is tiny, tiny, tiny compared to the biggest breweries in the world, really. China, of course, produces more beer than the next three largest beer producing nations in the world. So you're talking about massive Goliaths compared to minuscule Davids.
Well, you hear about craft beer growing in popularity. It's a very trendy thing in the West. But why does it seem that the growth of the beer market in China is fizzing out?
Well, I think that there are a few factors at play here. Economics, of course, always has a role to play in the beer market. The Chinese market grew extraordinarily quickly for roughly 2 decades. And during that period, there was a regular rise in the per capita beer consumption, but then that per capita consumption pretty much stalled. So we're not seeing growth in individual beer consumption. And coupled with that, there's been a tremendous growth in the import beer market. Now, the import beer market in China is still very, very small relative to the domestic beer market. But every small bit that the imports take away is Chinese beer production that's not being made and not being sold.
So what are the opportunities then for foreign and domestic breweries?
I think that, ultimately we've seen this happen in country after country where people are choosing, as they are able to do so, to buy, shall we say, more flavorful beer. Now, those could be in the form of craft beers, imports. Typically, the imports lead the way, and then the domestic craft market picks up after that. So, I think there is a lot of opportunity right now, especially in the larger cities, for imported beer, and that's going to be followed by a wave of Chinese craft brewing. There are only about estimated 200 breweries in China today, so I think we could see that number really, really inflate over the next decade or so.
And talk about what is the most popular. You're talking about import beers being popular in China. Are they from a particular region, or do you think Chinese are going for a particular style or taste?
Well, the Germans have dominated import sales in China basically as long as there has been imported beer in China. But what we're seeing now is growth in North American imports, particularly the United States. So, at conferences like you're going to see this week, you're going to see Americans there who are looking at the market, who are saying, okay, what opportunity does this present for us? And I think that you're going to see a growth in American imports and probably a corresponding tapering off in German imports.